So the chief data officer is a relatively new role, and there's a lot of misconceptions around it. So according to you, because you are director of data analytics and AI, which is to me essentially the CDO role, what is it and what is it not?
I love that question. I think the days of CDOs just owning, or senior data leaders in any sector organizations just owning dashboards, I think that's quite historic now. Gone are those days, I believe, and I'd like to believe. CDOs, data leaders, to me, are people who shape decisions in organizations, how they're made. We understand risk. We're also cultural leaders, right?
Yeah.
We bring clarity in chaotic environments. And that's my perception of a CDO, a data leader. So I don't believe that they belong in the basement anymore and that data is just dashboards. I think it's way beyond. It's shifting the way an organization thinks, its beliefs, how it's making decisions. But what do you think?
Well, I think, that really resonates with me. I think what's really important is to that the CDO really stands for data as a strategic asset. And that has its implications though. Like if we just see data as like a silo thing, then it's basically not working. You need to make sure that we are the ones that are on the decision-making strategy table, because the organization strategy, everything you do with data has to align with that.
They're the same.
And that's, I think, sometimes difficult, right? Because, how do you explain it to someone who's in charge of the strategy, like now with everything with AI? Like, how do you make sure these things really tie in together? And for me, it's about then laying the foundations like data governance, data management, which is very poorly understood. I think we come back to that later. But and the data strategy, and we have like and also doing really the work to make that strategy work in the organization, to build the people, the data organization, the processes and the technology that you have to make sure that the data can flow as a currency in your organization.
I love that.
And I think we have a saying in the Netherlands, and I don't think you have it in the UK though, but it's called that to make sure that your strategy doesn't become a paper tiger. And a paper tiger is just like, it looks really scary on paper, but
or just looks pretty on paper, but actually not able to. You've got to execute your strategy.
Exactly. And I think to me, the CDO is someone who is really not just writing strategy, who's really, executing it.
Living and breathing it. Exactly. Yeah.
Question for you, like, what misconceptions are you facing in this role?
I think generally, even though the role of a CDO has been around for a long time now, I remember being at Deloitte, establishing a CDO function for the Western route at Network Rail, and that was amazing. And this was, a good decade or so ago. But I still think that CDOs may not be taken seriously because the value is uncomfortable. Because as data leaders, we surface the risk, the gaps, the truths of the organization, which sometimes if you're very early on that maturity curve, you might not have the appetite for. So I think the misconception is just the power of a data leader in the organization, along with just data belongs to this particular team in the basement.
Is that also because we cannot really quantify the impact necessarily beforehand so much? It's hard to quantify, the value of data. So in some cases, yes, but especially looking at where you work now, and, it's a charity. Same for government. It's hard to say like, okay, it's actually this data creates this much profit. It's more about public value.
Public impact.
Yeah, and also I think even in companies that are for profit, it's still difficult. How do you quantify something? How do you quantify risk? How do you quantify like reputation? Of course, there are all methodologies for it, but I think by the time you actually have quantified it, in that time you could have built your data governance framework, right? So,
I think, this is a topic I'm quite passionate about because I don't think many people get to talk about it. It's very, I think it's great. Of course, you need to link your data initiatives, your governance to outcomes and business value. But actually, what is the value of data? And without actually having the foundations in place, you don't have the data to be able to cost up your risk appetite,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then you're in this catch-22 of how do I build business cases to fund or build out my data governance capability without justifying the value? And I think that is probably the circle that data leaders get caught up in. And it's
For sure.
a prevalent conversation that's happening across in the domain, but not many people talk about it, sadly.
For me, it's really like the chicken and the egg conversation, right? You can only show do something when you show the value, but you can only show the value when you do something. It's like, okay, where do you start? And I mean, we come back to that, like, how do we set up our first 100 days of being a CDO? But another topic I wanted to talk about is like, how do you feel the CDO is taken serious at the C-suite table? Basically?
So given that I've just said that the CDO comes with, there are misconceptions, I do believe that to be a successful data leader, a successful CDO, I think the key is just resilience and consistency. And it's over, I believe, a longer period of time, maybe compared to other board members. Because as we touched on, we need to align on the outcomes, right? We need to provide tailored insights. We have to build relationships, as you talk about stakeholder engagement management, right? That is something that we need to do consistently across the organization, across all the levels of hierarchy. That takes time. That's active support, not just verbal.
And how do you think others in the C-suite should support that? Because I think CDOs kind of like have to fight sometimes for their position because all the other roles are, in general, I would say, a little bit more established. So, and also the conception about what is a CDO really, right? I think people sometimes think, oh, the chief data officer is just about the data, and that's like a silo.
That reports.
And that's report, and then, but it kind of like really has to tie into all the other systems and roles. So it's cross departments. It's this currency running, across all departments, really.
That's it.
And I feel that that's sometimes misunderstood. And also the data officer is not only about data, it's about leveraging data for your organization and making sure that you actually can realize your organization's strategy. And I think that is a bit misunderstood. It's like thinking about the old IT departments. It's like, you know what, IT is fixing it. Whereas in reality, it's not like, oh, the data department is like fixing the stuff. No, it's kind of like tied into all the activities an organization does. So all the domain expertise and all the silos, they also work with data. And then the CDO, I believe, is the one who's kind of like has to bring that all together as like one stream of things that's going to benefit the organization.
Completely.
But I find it sometimes difficult to get that across because it's just completely, as you also said, it's a new way of working. You have to convince people. You have to be very, as you said, very resilient and just keep showing that.
And I think you've just highlighted it. It's we're changing a belief system. And that's not easy.
No.
Right? So that doesn't take away from responsibility of other C-suite members, right? Because the point is all leaders work together. But the role of a CDO is so integral, as you said, it's enterprise-wide and it runs through absolutely every single role. It's about shared accountability. And if you make it about, as hard as it is that we've just touched on, if it becomes about the risk, if it becomes about the decisions, and it's relatable to the decision makers of the organization, I think that's when the data person can then become a strategic counterpart. And I think that's the role that we play.
I agree with you. And then a difficult one, because we all have a chief information officer. And that's, of course, like an established role, right? And the question is like, how does that work? How do these work together? I've spoken to some peers that find it difficult, in terms of mandate when, Anyway, I want to hear your story about this, if you have one.
This one's an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's so many roles popping up. There's the CDO, there's a CTO, of course, traditionally. Then we've got a CIO now.
Chief Analytics, Chief AI.
That's it. Pull it all the Chief AI Officer, Chief Analytics and AI Officer, put all of the words in. And I'd like to believe... It's
going to be really busy.
The whole alphabet. I'd like to believe that those traditional boundaries are blurring.
Yeah.
I'd really like to believe that.
I like to believe that also.
Yeah. Because data is not just about reporting and technology is not just about infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And they're part of the same insight or intelligence ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right? So you can have one person or you can have multiple. For me, it's not about the job titles, as long as it's the shared intelligence ecosystem that you're working towards. That is then, you can have as many roles or as few, depending on the organization and how you want to build that
as long
out.
as they integrate really well.
Yeah,
right?
that's really what it's about. And I know I've oversimplified it, but I'd like to think that's the direction we're going towards.
I hope so, because I feel there's still this, like overlap of a mandate. But I really see it this way. Like for me, the chief information officer is the one who's providing the tracks, and the CDO is like, making the train. And the CDO, thank you. And then, the CDO basically still has to say what kind of train we want and where do we actually want to go.
Yeah.
And the CEO has to basically say, okay, that we need these tracks and they have to be put into this direction. But if you kind of like don't communicate, you end up with, things that are completely not aligned.
Well, the train derails, right?
Yeah, derails, goes to the other side, goes to the other city. And I think that integration and also I think clear communication also where I think the old idea also is like chief information is data not part of information.
Right.
That's also something that's...
What is insight then?
Yeah, that's very difficult for people to understand. And I understand because even for me, it's like if I have to put this on paper, how am I going to explain this to someone who doesn't really... it's not really in this field.
Yeah.
So it becomes very difficult to explain because of like the historically, organically grown titles, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a conversation, the CIO role doesn't exist at SAFE, but the conversation that I've had, and the one thing I've been very clear in all the coffee chats and cakes that I've had with people over the 16 months, because that's the best way to build relationships.
That's
honestly.
so true.
Right, and lunches.
Yeah, 100%.
One, I refrain using the word data analytics, AI, technology, but also just they do go hand in hand. And if we're talking about shaping the right decisions for an organization, whether that be more humanitarian, more impact-driven in the field that we're in, the risk appetite for our organizations or our sectors, I think is lower because the impact is broader, right? You've got public impact. We're here making decisions effectively about children.
So let's go back to the chief AI officer one, because you are
data analytics and AI.
That's amazing. But now I see a lot that people are asking for chief AI officer, which I understand because it's big, it's exploding AI now. But let's talk about the pros and the cons of that. I think for me the pros would be that if you have like a really large research department in pharma or genomics, but how do you see this?
I agree with you. I think for some sectors it completely makes sense, again, coming back to that maturity curve of an organization. And yes, it's not so much about who owns AI, but there needs to be someone responsible for the ethics and, just driving responsibility and accountability and not beyond just innovation. Absolutely. So there is a pro, but I think the fragmentation there it's in silo.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, for me, it shouldn't be about the job titles.
Yeah.
Instead of saying who owns AI, I think it should be around who's really stewarding insight or intelligence that we touched on earlier. And that could mean a combination of different roles, right? Or just one person, again.
Right. So that's actually an interesting one when you talk about stewardship. Because I almost think like, is it not a role in a data organization, I mean, is it, it's not about job titles. I totally get it because it can be that because you are creating a job title, you create its own department and a silo underneath, whereas we are actually, I think that's also how we think, right? We think about what works for the organization.
Yeah.
Like what kind of systems, how do they integrate? And what you're saying is, okay, if you kind of like, it's fine to have someone who's responsible for that, because that's probably also part of governance, right?
Absolutely.
It's more like, how do you really make sure that what you're building integrates?
Exactly. And I think maybe we share the same views. It's designing around capability. So AI's for me. It's not a tool. It's a
No.
capability.
Yeah.
And you and I have had many chats around shaping that future of what AI looks like, and the capability and the skill set and the roles and the people and the behaviors that we want to embed across organizations. But with all these roles, again, however organizations want to do it, as long as you're designing around capability and accountability and a cohesion, then it makes sense.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.